but it seemed as if it snowed.
The Genoese threw down their weapons and fled. This so disgusted the French king, he ordered his mounted knights to attack. The French knights charged through the confused lines of retreating crossbowmen. The ground was soft after rain. Within seconds, the French attack became a churning, muddy mass of chainmail, horses, and men, all writhing under the hail of English arrows. The French were in disarray. A few of their knights were driven into the English lines by the sheer impetus of their charge.
They were beaten down with axes, lances, and swords. And in the middle of the host, many Frenchmen were crushed to death without any wound, simply by the weight of numbers.
After 16 fruitless charges, the French withdrew, utterly defeated. The English remained in battle formation throughout the night. At sunrise, Edward's messengers found 1,542 French lords and knights dead beside 20,000 men and horses. The English lost 2 knights and 80 men. The English victory at Crécy stunned Europe. To the Europeans, English tactics based on the firepower of the longbow came as a complete surprise. A new day was dawning for the infantrymen. The horseman would have a place on the battlefield for centuries to come, but he would no longer dominate as he had for the last 1,000 years. The days of the mounted knight were over. But the whiz of English arrows was not the only sound of firepower at Crécy. Edward had brought to the battle a handful of bombards, early cannon that hurled stone balls. The bombard was loud, inaccurate, and did little more than frighten the French horses. Yet it delivered the opening shot in a revolution that would transform war and civilization forever. Gunpowder. (1453), where Europe meets Asia. Constantinople. For 1,000 years, this great city has protected Christianity in the East. Now it is the last bastion of Constantine, 88th Emperor of Byzantium. His empire is a Christian island, lapped by the rising tide of Islam. As Islamic soldiers approach, farmers and peasants seek shelter. The once great empire has shrunk to the city of Constantinople and the farmland around it. North, south, east, and west, all has fallen to Islam. Constantine must rally his people. Only the walls of Constantinople stand between the Christian empire and the triumph of Islam. 130 miles to the northwest, in Adrianople, a young Turkish sultan, Mehmet II, had just become ruler of the Ottomans. He cast his eyes on the greatest prize of all, Constantinople, a prize those before him failed to take. Mehmet was ambitious. He also was interested in new technology. A Hungarian engineer, Urban, brought him plans for a super gun. Mehmet was fascinated. Constantine already had refused Urban's new gun. It was too expensive. Urban built and tested his super gun. It fired an 18-inch diameter granite ball up to a mile, burying itself 6 feet deep in the earth. Mehmet made plans to lay siege to Constantinople. He positioned the super gun outside the main gate. On April 12, 1453, his cannon roared. The thick city walls that for centuries had protected the Christian capital in the east crumbled in weeks. Mehmet's troops poured into the city. For days they looted and murdered. Eventually, a severed head was delivered to Mehmet. They said it was Constantine's. Later, a headless body was discovered in Constantine's armor. Gunpowder had won Islam a toehold in the West. Mehmet's supergun altered the course of history. But it wasn't a weapon to be dragged from siege to siege. It needed 60 oxen and 200 men to haul it into place. Once positioned, it took over an hour to load. Its recoil was so great, it took 3 hours to realign so it could be fired again. For lengthy campaigns, lighter, more mobile weapons would be needed. 40 years later, the French King Charles VIII discovered how to make them. The new guns were light, metal weapons, founded in bronze by the same technique used for making church bells. He called these light metal tubes cannon, from the Latin word canna, meaning tube. Because they were light, the cannon were mobile, and because they fired iron balls, they were more effective against city walls.